Hello ladies, I'm glad you're joining me for yet another informative tutorial on menopause. Last week we began our unit on heart attacks, and I explained why it's so bizarre that women, the media, the medical profession, and society focus so much more on breast cancer when in fact heart attacks are much more common and much more deadly. And today I'm going to teach you what causes a heart attack. Now, you probably think you already know what causes a heart attack, but I have a way of explaining things that makes them much more vivid and comprehensible. So even if you think you already know everything about what causes a heart attack, please continue to watch this video. You'll learn something that furthers your understanding. This material is in Chapter 28 on heart attack of my book, regardless of whether you have the first edition or the brand new second edition. It's Chapter 28 and it's under the second section called Causes. This is a model of your heart. But when it comes to what causes a heart attack, the problem does not originate in your heart. Your heart is just the part of your body that suffers as a result of a problem elsewhere. You see these tube-like structures that are emanating off the heart in all these different directions? These are the arteries that supply the blood to your heart. They're short little structures on this model, but in real life, they aren't short. This model represents only the trunks of the arteries, but they're just like the trunk of a tree. The tree trunk branches out into smaller and smaller and smaller limbs. And the trunk is what supplies water to all the tree limbs. Well, your heart arteries are just like the trunk of a tree. They travel all over your entire body, branching into smaller and smaller arteries so that they reach every part of your body. Here's an illustration of that. So when it comes to a heart attack, it's your arteries that cause the heart attack, not your heart itself. Here I have a hose. It's a good representation of what your arteries are like. Your blood flows through the hose, and your blood carries oxygen to all parts of your body. But you know how you can sometimes get a kink in a hose? What happens when there's a kink in the hose? The flow of water through the hose stops, doesn't it? There you are watering the tree, and suddenly the water flow stops. And you have to unkink the hose to get it to flow again, don't you? Well, that's exactly what can happen to your arteries. They can get a kink. It looks different than the kink you get in a hose because the artery doesn't fold over on itself like the hose does. Instead of folding on itself to impede the flow, the kink forms inside the artery. But the result is similar. The blood flow ceases. Now, I just told you that your blood carries oxygen. Every cell in your body has to have oxygen in order to survive. So anytime there is a kink or blockage in an artery, anything beyond the blockage suffocates due to lack of oxygen. So if this hose is taking blood to your heart, anything that is beyond a kink will suffocate. And in this case, it's your heart. When the part of your body suffocates from lack of oxygen, it dies. And that's exactly what happens to your heart. The part of your heart that gets blood and oxygen from that blocked artery dies. And death of a part of your heart is called a heart attack. So think of a heart attack as a blockage in an artery going to your heart. Okay, now let's focus on the inside of an artery. This is a representation of the inside of a normal artery. As you can see, it is wide open and very clean. So blood flow through this artery is swift, unobstructed, and plentiful. This is an artery that contains a small amount of fat buildup within the artery. Most of the artery is still open and available for blood flow. So the area of the heart beyond this artery will still get enough blood and oxygen to function normally. But look at this artery. If the buildup of fat within the artery continues, you see that more and more of the artery becomes occluded. The blood flow in this artery is about half that in the previous artery. And what if the fat buildup gets even worse? Now there's hardly any opening at all. So there's barely enough room for any blood flow here. Look at that. And that means that the part of the heart beyond this fat-filled artery is going to suffocate from too little oxygen. It may manage to function to some degree, but not normally. And when the artery becomes totally blocked, a heart attack is inevitable. So here is the progression. Now, there are many names for all of this. You know me well enough to realize that I care much more about making sure you understand the process than I do about your knowing all the esoteric medical terms for everything. But I do think it's important for you to recognize the meanings of the terms you hear. So you'll hear many terms to describe this phenomenon of a blockage in an artery that can cause a heart attack. You won't hear it called a kink in a hose like I just described. But that image is what will help you remember this lesson. I've also been known to describe it as a roadblock. You know, when the road is blocked and traffic grinds to a halt, it depicts the same thing that happens when fat builds up in your arteries. You see, I go through life considering all the different ways I can explain things to you. But most people in the medical profession just use the medical terms and expect you to know what they mean. They fail to realize that while you may have heard the term, you don't necessarily know what it means. I prefer to assume you know nothing and to find creative ways to explain things so that you never have to wonder about them again. So here are some of the medical terms you might hear to depict blocked arteries. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, cholesterol buildup, lipid buildup, coronary artery disease, cardiovascular disease, myocardial infarction, MI, or heart attack. Sometimes, with so many different ways to describe one thing, you're left wondering how they differ or if they differ. I don't want you getting confused unnecessarily. Now, one of the terms in that list used the word lipid, and lipids are fats. But all lipids are not the same, and you need to know how they differ. So that will be the topic for our next video. I'll talk about all the lipids, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As you can see, this education on heart attacks will be stepwise. Each video tutorial will build on the last. Please, please, please watch them in order. I will make absolutely sure to teach you everything. But if you jump around or watch them out of order, you will be confused. The whole purpose of this education is to avoid confusion. The whole purpose of any education is to avoid confusion. So why sabotage yourself by watching these out of order? How about this? I'll do my part by presenting them in order, and you do your part by watching them in order. Deal? In any case, I just love making these videos for you, and I hope you can see my passion. And with that, I will bid you goodbye today. Please subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and visit my website, which is menopausetailor.me. Bye for now.